Spring is in North Wales, so it's time for me to crawl from my pit, get out into the wilderness and tell you what I read in April. Hello, welcome to The Book Thing. I'm Mark, and in the month when I finally finished my Discworld read-through, this is what else I read. So in no particular order, the first thing I'm going to talk about is The Collectors by David Baldacci. It's the second in his Camel Club series of books, and the Camel Club are this odd group of misfits and conspiracy theorists who live in Washington DC, led by the mysterious Oliver Stone, who has a bit of a interesting past, which I won't go into on this. So one of the members of the Camel Club works in the Library of Congress, and his boss is found inexplicably dead, and the Camel Club decide to investigate and discover that it is related to a much bigger conspiracy. Parallel to that, we're introduced to the character of Annabelle Conroy, who is a con artist with the intention of pulling off a Ocean's 11 style heist on the casino owner Jerry Bagger in New Jersey, a particularly dangerous psychopath, but she has her reasons for wanting to get back at him. So these two stories are parallel to each other, and as the book continues they converge on each other, and yeah, it's a silly thriller, as you'd expect from David Baldacci. Quite high concept, lot of fun, 3.5 stars. Yeah, if you like the David Baldacci's style of daft thrillers, which I do, then definitely worth a read. Now, the pick for the I'm with the Band book club this month was The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. Now, I was particularly keen on reading this one because I really want to read James by Percival Everett. I read The Trees last year, thoroughly enjoyed it, and everyone is raving about how great James is, so I'm hoping to read that soon. But as a primer to that, I read The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, and this is the story of Huck Finn, who is the friend of Tom Sawyer from the previous book, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer by Mark Twain, which I haven't read. And Huck is the son of a local drunk and ne'er-do-well, and he decides to fake his own death and to escape down the river. On his way, he meets Jim, who is the running away from slavery, and they form this alliance and friendship as they carry on down the river. Now, this is a book that has been challenged, largely on the surface due to the use of the N-word when discussing the character of Jim, and it is an uncomfortable thing to read, I get that, but when it comes to language like that, you kind of have to look at both the context of the time and the intent of the author. Now, the context of the time, it was a word that it wasn't a flattering word, but it was a slang word that didn't have as deeply negative connotations as it does now. And the intent from Mark Twain is that he was very much anti-slavery. I mean, he wasn't a massive abolitionist or anything like that, but he certainly wrote this book from the perspective of showing that slavery was wrong. And we get to go on Huck's journey as well, where he stops seeing Jim as property and a man in his own right and a friend. And it's almost this sort of metaphor for how America are seeing the African-American population. I mean, it's important to remember that the meanings of words change over time, and the connotations with words change over time. I'll give you an example. It is perfectly acceptable to describe literature or stories that relate to LGBTQ characters as queer fiction now. Now, that's an uncomfortable word for me to say, because when I was growing up, that was entirely a derogatory word to use. But as I said, the meanings and intent of words change over time. So it's important to look at that context and look at what the intent of it was. It is a good book. I wouldn't say it's a great book. I know that's a bit of a controversial statement considering it's The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. It's considered one of the great American novels. But I think it drops off a cliff when the character of Tom Sawyer shows up. So minor spoiler for the book, but Jim gets captured again and it's down to Tom and Huck to break him out. And Tom has these romantic notions of captivity, which he's continually insisting that Jim plays into these archetypes for it, and it is painful to read, and it goes on for quite a long time, and then the plot threads are probably all wrapped up in the last paragraph of the book. I didn't love it. It's fine. I gave it 3 stars, and I'm looking forward to James because I'm hoping it's going to be a better experience. Now, a few weeks ago, I did the Quick to Judge tag where I read the first paragraph of a couple of books and picked the one that was the most intriguing for me. I'll link to the video above, but the book that I chose to read was The Girl with All the Gifts by M.R. Carey. Now, The Girl with All the Gifts is the story of Melanie and is told from her perspective, and it is set in this post-apocalyptic world where most of the population has been infected with the cordyceps fungus. Now, that's a real-life fungus which infects ants, and there's documentaries you can watch online, and they are properly nightmare fuel, but they infect the ants, they alter their brain chemistry, they ultimately kill them and get them to change their behavior in a way so that they can go and infect others. This is a story about how a variant of that fungus starts to infect people, but there are a group of survivors, and within that group of survivors in a military camp, there are a group of children, our primary character Melanie being among them, who seem to have some form of immunity to the fungus. Now, that sounds a little bit like the plot of The Last of Us. You wouldn't be wrong. It has a very, very similar premise. And actually, the game The Last of Us and the book The Girl with All the Gifts came out around about the same time. So clearly the ideas were thought up independently, but at the same time to each other. But from there, the story is quite different. It does have the travel across the post-apocalyptic landscape. It does have the battling with the Hungries, as they're called in this, and it does have the attachment of the girl to other survivors. But other than that, the stories are actually quite different, and I really liked The Girl with All the Gifts. It was a really good read. It was especially interesting being from the point of view of Melanie, whose immunity is not necessarily what it seems, and they're not entirely immune, and they're not entirely unaffected by the nature of the fungus, which makes them want to attack other people. So it is a really interesting way that the story is told. There is a prequel to it as well, which I might get to as well. I think it's called The Boy on the Bridge or something, but yeah, that's it's definitely an interesting world, and it's kind of heartbreaking as well. It is very much about a child looking for a family and the family that she finds. Yeah, I gave it 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. Definitely worth checking out. Now, April was the month that I finally finished my read through of the Discworld, and the last 3 books that I finished in April were Snuff, Raising Steam, and The Shepherd's Crown. Each of those has got their own separate review video, but if you'd like to see them or any of the other Discworld reviews that I've done, you feel free to check out my channel, and if you like what you see, maybe you'd hit a like and subscribe button as well, please. Now, in April, I reread The Third Policeman by Flann O'Brien. So Flann O'Brien, Irish author, who was a satirist and wrote very, very surreal stories, and The Third Policeman is no exception. It's the story of this unnamed protagonist who inherits a pub from his parents, and then takes on this character called Divney to help him run the place. Now, the protagonist is obsessed with this philosopher stroke scientist stroke crackpot called De Selby, and wants to produce the definitive work analysing the works of De Selby. And he gets convinced by Divney that the only way that he's going to have enough money to carry on the pub and continue with his research and his writings is to murder and rob this old miser who lives nearby. And then the plot takes a very, very surreal turn, and it has been described as Alice in Wonderland in hell. This is a 5-star read for me, and that might sound like a recommendation, but it's not, because this book is not for everyone. The tone, the story, the descriptions in this are somewhere between David Lynch, Salvador Dali, and Father Ted. It is very, very weird. There is a reveal at the end which give some explanation for part of the weirdness. And this might be one of the very few instances where knowing the twist going in might make it an easier read. I don't know, because this is a reread for me. I've read it a few times in the past, and as a reread for me, I knew what the reveal was going in, and it gives context to the story, but I don't know whether it's better to know it in advance or not. If there's anyone who has read The Third Policeman who's watching this, I'd be really interested if you can comment down below as to whether you think you should know what the reveal is going in, or you should wait until the twist at the end. I know there's at least one of you who's read The Third Policeman. You know who you are. Yes, I'm talking to you. So like I said, it's a 5-star read, but it's not necessarily a recommendation. If it sounds intriguing to you, give it a go. And if you're struggling with it, maybe you might want to look into what the twist is, and it might help. But other than that, yeah, this isn't for everyone. Now, a book I can recommend is The Talented Mr. Ripley by Patricia Highsmith. This is the first in her series of Ripley novels. It's the only one I've read. And it's the story of Tom Ripley, this low-level confidence scammer stroke fraudster in New York in the 1950s, who is approached by a wealthy man called Herbert Greenleaf, who believes Tom to be a friend of his son's. Now, Tom is only really an acquaintance of his son's. But Mr. Greenleaf's son, Dickie, has moved to the Italian coast and is living this life as a painter off his the trust fund money that he has. But Herbert believes that it is time for him to come home. So he employs Tom Ripley to go to the south of Italy and try and convince his son Dickie to come home. So Tom goes, begins to ingratiate himself to Dickie and his friend Marge, and starts to try and convince Dickie to come home. But things start to go downhill from there, and it's not a spoiler because it says so in the blurb of the book, but it eventually leads to a murder. Now, what I found really fascinating about this book is, in fiction we've been kind of led to believe that the confidence trickster, the conman, they're suave, sophisticated and always in control. But we're presented at this from the inside of Tom Ripley's head, and Tom Ripley is very much dealing with self-doubt and anxiety, and is very much living moment to moment without a grander scheme. And on top of that, he is also clearly struggling with his own sexuality, because he has feelings towards Dickie that he's not really willing to accept and deal with. Remember, this is set in the 1950s, and all of this begins to play a part on Tom's neuroses, and things start to spiral. It's interesting because Tom is clearly the villain of the story, and while we're looking at him and thinking he should get his comeuppance, we're also anxious that he continues to evade the consequences of his actions. This was another 5-star read for me. I really enjoyed this, and I'll definitely be reading some more of Patricia Highsmith stuff. So that was everything I read in April. It's well into May now at this stage, so I have a good idea of some of the things I am reading in May. So a couple of those are, I'm continuing with the David Baldacci Camel Club books, because they're silly and great fun. I'm doing a couple of buddy reads. I'm doing, at the moment, a buddy read with John at Disquiet and Dragons, and we're reading Project Hail Mary together, and that is an absolute blast. I'll get onto that at a later date. And I'm also going to be doing a buddy read with Nikhil at Shelf Esteem, and we're going to be reading Flint by Louis L'Amour. Louis L'Amour? Louis L'Amour? I'm not sure which one it is. But yeah, it's an old pulp cowboy novel, which is supposed to be great. I haven't read any Louis L'Amour. He's someone that I've been wanting to get onto for a while, so this is a good chance to dive in and see what Louis L'Amour is like. And on top of that, after 30 years, I decided to give Jane Austen another chance, and I read Pride and Prejudice. So, am I a convert to Jane Austen now? Well, you're going to have to wait for my video on that to see. Anyway, thanks a million for watching. Really appreciate you taking the time to do that, and take care.